Welcome into another edition of Locked On 76ers. Keith Pompey, Marc Farzetta, Eric Gordon re-signs with the Philadelphia 76ers and will continue to monitor and measure the impact of Guerschon Yabusele signing with the New York Knicks yesterday, shortly after we concluded the program. That's this edition of Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Boy, oh boy, Keith, just as fate would have it yesterday, the news broke shortly after we did our Locked On 76ers live free agency edition yesterday. Maybe 10 minutes after we concluded the program, Guerschon Yabusele, it became known that he is going to the New York Knicks on a 2-year, $12 million deal. Seems affordable. We did do a reaction show to that, a brief one, but we'll get more into it today. And we do want to say thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. There's a lot that Guerschon Yabusele did for the 76ers. We've talked about his versatility, why we would want him back with the 76ers. But every time we talked about it, Keith, we did it under the umbrella, under the acknowledgement of, yeah, he ain't coming back. Like, it just didn't look. We talked about the market that was out there. We talked about him buying real estate in Philadelphia, allegedly, all this stuff. And now he's going to New York with the Knicks. We knew it was happening, but the fact that it's the Knicks makes it sting just a little bit more.
Yeah, it does. And, yesterday I was saying to myself, like, well, if he was going to go, he was going to go. It's something you can't control. But, the thing is, it's one of those things, like you said, we thought that he was going to make more money, right, in free agency. And you realize that they gave him the taxpayer mid-level exception, right? $6 million. The 76ers had the same thing. And the problem, so they could have offered it to him. But again, they're focused on Quentin Grimes. They made Quentin Grimes a priority. So if one of those things is, Yabu couldn't sit around and wait before the money dried up and he left. And to me is when you look at this, you're saying to yourself, like, okay, I get it. I totally understand it. But you lost them to a team that's one of your stiffest competitors. And you had the money available. So that has to hurt. And when you look at the roster right now and the way the roster is constructed, you only have one real power forward on the team, and that's Trendon Watford. And you say to yourself, it's like, okay, Trendon Watford is a power forward. He's extremely athletic, but he's a great passer. He's a good facilitator. He can be ball dominant at times, setting teammates up. But you need a guy who can be more of a spot up shooter. That's not what Trendon does. And that's not a knock on Trendon. It's like you can have two. You can have the facilitator, but then you can also have a guy who comes off the bench. And when you look at the Sixers roster right now and you see they're extremely guard heavy, and they're probably going to get even more guard heavy, and you only have one power forward who needs the ball, so to speak, is like, I hope this doesn't come back to haunt the Sixers, and I hope that they'll probably have some trades and more moves to make because the roster construction is very unbalanced right now.
Absolutely. Look, they went guard heavy. We'll get more into bringing back Eric Gordon, but they brought back Eric Gordon, who's going to be 37 in December for this upcoming season. And then you look at the guards, they're guard heavy, obviously. You look at the swing position, you could have Kelly Oubre play that. Obviously, you're going to have Paul George playing that same type of position. It's a little confusing there. But when you talk about the power forward spot, Adem Bona doesn't have the versatility. I mean, he's got the athleticism, but not in terms of shooting from the outside even a little bit. You also look at Watford. He's a guy you're going to be depending on to pull down some rebounds, and also a guy maybe facilitate from time to time, but doesn't have the speed for it, doesn't have the quickness for it. And then you also look at Janai Broom, just talking about candidates for a power forward spot. Yeah. I don't see, he doesn't have the athleticism for it. He's a lumbering big man, if you will. So it is a huge question mark. And Guerschon Yabusele, I hate to use the term, but the modern NBA kind of requires that kind of skill set if you're going to have anybody log significant minutes at the power forward position. I mean, you're talking about a prototypical power forward spot, not to invoke this name, but Tobias Harris. That's not a guy that's banging boards down low. That's a guy that, yeah, can get you some boards, but also shoot from the outside. That's not something that Sixers have right now on the roster as it's constructed.
Exactly. Now, another person that we can say as a candidate who can probably slide in there could be Justin Edwards, right? Justin Edwards, but at the same time, he's 6'7", right? And he's more of a 3-4, so to speak, if that's what you want to call him. But yeah, you're right. I mean, Tobias, that's that type of guy that you would need, a guy who can, stick shots, a guy who can guard multiple positions. Because, when we talk about ball dominance and guys having the ball, Tyrese Maxey is going to have the ball. Jared McCain is going to have the ball. VJ Edgecombe, you want him to get the ball and go downhill and make stuff happen, right? More so look for his shot as opposed to passing it to other people. Joel Embiid, they tend to run their offense through him in the past, right? So what you need a guy who's going to get lost, a guy that's like people aren't going to focus on, and then he ends up in the corner and the ball swings to him and he knocks down that shot. And, right now they just don't have that in a power forward type, you know what I mean? So,
right.
You just gotta, you gotta be able to stretch the floor. And then the thing about it is, the thing that I liked about Yabu is he can play multiple positions. I mean, he started in 43 of 70 games played last year because of injuries, but several of those games was at the center spot. A couple of them was at the power forward. So he showed some versatility. But to me, the 76ers need to get a guy in here, a big, who can knock down shots. When we look at Broom, that's not his game. We look at Wofford, that's not his game. Abona, that's not his game, right? So yeah. Drummond, that's not his game. So they need a guy who can come in and knock down shots.
Do you think there's any chance? Now, look, this would be for me out of position. Kelly Oubre, we talked about his size yesterday. A lot of people don't realize that he's 6'8". Yeah. He's not a rebounder by any means, but you talk about a guy that could play in the corner three, a guy that obviously has experience starting. Do you see in the way this roster? I'm not saying this is ideal. Let me get that out of the way, Keith. I'm not saying this is ideal. But if you're bringing up Justin Edwards, I'd bring up also Kelly Oubre. With this roster, with Embiid and Paul George playing, and likely if you sign Quentin Grimes to anything north of $18 million, he's going to be a starter for you. So would you see potentially Kelly Oubre playing the 4 spot, or at least doing an impression of a 4 if he's going to be in the Sixers starting 5?
I mean, yes, I can, but I think that it will be one of those things where they just say you got 2 forwards, and right. Depending on the matchup, who goes down there. To me right now, I got to see what Paul George is how athletic he is, how he moves, because if Kelly moves better than PG and does stuff, I think that PG may be the guy. You understand what I'm saying? Like the one down there, and then he gets away, and then someone finds him and he hits the shot or something like that, or at least tries to initiate the offense. Because as good as Kelly is too, like Kelly is good at the dunker position. Kelly is really good at cutting to the basket and getting rebounds and put back dunks and that type of stuff. But I'm not 100% sure if he's going to be the guy that's swinging around and doing catch and shoot threes. You want him more on the attacking spot, and the same with Paul. But I think that yes, he could do that. But I just think that they got a hole right now. When we look at this roster, last year the weakness was you only had one power forward, one identifiable power forward, right? And right now you look, that was last year, and that was Yabusele. right now you look at this roster and they only have one identifiable power forward, and that is the guy who replaced Yabusele.
I feel like, Keith, we watched the NBA Finals and then we watched the rest of the NBA, and they went, okay, we need guards. We watched the NBA Finals, we need guards. And the Sixers like, let's get all the guards. Let's re-sign Eric Gordon. We'll see what that means for the future of Kyle Lowry. We'll get to that. But we need guards. Keep getting guards. And then it was like, boss, we forgot about one particular position. Drat. Like we're out of luck as far as that spot goes right now with the 76ers. I do want to ask you before we take our first break. Eric Gordon does re-sign with the Sixers. What does that mean for this? Are we just looking at a guy that hopefully can play or shoot 41% from the floor or from three when he plays? And also, how does that impact Kyle Lowry? Because pre-draft, we talked a lot about how Lowry can help a young guy like Ace Bailey. Now that's not happening. Does Kyle Lowry still come back with the 76ers after signing another aging guard?
I mean, here's the thing, Lowry is more of, and Eric Gordon is a quiet leader, and he's a leader, but Lowry is still a leader of the team, right? He's still a vocal leader. The fact that, and I'm sorry for being long-winded, but the fact that you have Edgecombe, whose favorite number is number 7, and he's rocking number 77, but his favorite in jersey number is number 7, tells me that Kyle Lowry is still coming back.
Fair enough. All right, I want to get more into that in a second. Also, I do want to talk about what the expectations are for Eric Gordon. And VJ Edgecombe said something during his media availability of practice yesterday, getting ready for Summer League play, that raised my eyebrows. Because, Keith, I did go back under your instruction, under your advice. I went back and I watched Baylor versus Houston. Round 1, because they faced each other twice last year. Round 1. Not great. No bueno. All right. We'll talk about that also when we return. This is Locked On 76ers on the Locked On 76ers YouTube channel. Keith Pompey, Marc Farzetta, back after this. Hey, how about a Monarch Money? You guys have heard us talking a lot about Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt a little bit easier? Maybe you just moved in with your significant other. Maybe you just came into some other money, some new money, found some money, an inheritance. How about managing that money with Monarch Money? Monarch Money can do it all. Whether you're growing your own savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO right on your phone, giving you full visibility over and over again when it comes to your finances and control over your finances. How about that? Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. I got 2 young kids. I'm thinking about college already. You got to save the pennies for that. Monarch Money helps you keep track of all of it. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA. That's promo code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, promo code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year at monarchmoney.com. All right, so overall expectations, away from leadership and all that stuff, Eric Gordon coming back to the 76ers, shot around 41%, just under 41% from 3 last year in the games that he was available for to play. What are your expectations, and what is the impact of Eric Gordon staying here in Philadelphia?
It's weird. I guess I'm in the minority. Now, here's the thing with Eric Gordon. Eric Gordon struggled early on in the season. Defensively, he was a liability out there. But he shot 41.9%, like you said, which was, his 3rd highest shooting percentage, 3-point shooting percentage of his career. And he was shooting 52.6% on threes during a 17-game stretch in January before injuries derailed the season, right? So when you look at him and you say to yourself, even at his age, he's the best shooter on the team, right? But we also got to realize that he had career low averages of 6.8 points in 19.7 minutes played. The 76ers just added another young guard, and Guerschon Yabusele, I'm not Guerschon, Quentin Grimes is coming in, supposedly, like they're waiting for him. So he's going to take a hit. So a big hit. He already took a hit last year. To me, he's going to be more of a situational player if they need somebody to come in and make shots. But for the most part, he is going to be there for Edgecombe. They both were on the Bahamian national team. You know, he's going to be here and he's going to be his mentor. That's what his role is going to be. He's also going to be one of those veteran guys who's really nice in the locker room that people love. But for the most part, there's not a lot of balls that go around. And if we look at it last year, the only reason why he played the minutes that he played was because Jared McCain went down. Before that, he was benched. Like, he wasn't playing. They benched him.
Yeah.
So, you know, with that being said, I don't see them saying, okay, we're going to go back to you and you're going to have a prominent role. I just don't see that.
Look, I look at it, and you brought up the 3-point shooting. That's all I need. That's all I need from Eric Gordon. Yeah, go be the veteran, be a voice, be a leader as far as, you know, by example and all that, be a professional. But if you could be a guy late in games, come off the bench, or late in the first half, the Sixers need a little bit of a run, need someone to come off the bench, knock down some threes. He could be that guy. That's all. Hey, concentrate on one thing. I always find it's better when you have the aging veterans. This is your job. This is the box you live in now. Just do that. Your box is hit threes and be a leader. I think Eric Gordon can do that. I'm not furious by any means that he's back. I did find it. I found it interesting last year when they signed Eric Gordon. I thought that was the end of Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry got re-signed. So I find it interesting that Kyle Lowry would still be back. And when it comes to the guard-heavy team that you have, I know some people, I'm only asking this question because I know other people have asked this. Fans have talked about it. I know people in our chat have talked about it. Is there any world where Kyle Lowry stays on the team as a coach, as any role like that where it doesn't involve him, getting money from the salary cap?
I mean, I don't know, but if I was Kyle Lowry, I wouldn't do it. Like, yeah. I mean, I'm just saying being selfish. Like, I'm just being real. And the reason being is I'm saying that is because, we're talking about $3.6 million that you're going to get. Now, probably 2.3 will go against the salary cap. It would. That's it. But I mean, at the most, how much are you going to pay an assistant coach who's probably not a bench coach, right? You know what I mean? Like, to me, if I'm Lowry, you got to think about yourself. And I get what people are saying, but you got to think about yourself. And I wouldn't do it until it's time. And a lot of teams have done this. We talked about it before. Udonis Haslem, when he was with Miami, and then you talk at James Johnson with the Indiana Pacers, Markieff Morris when he was with the Brooklyn Nets, and then the Dallas Mavericks, and then, the Lakers, right? You have these guys who take the minimum, and their role is to be the leader of the locker room. So, it's crazy. Like, my thing is, it seems like this probably had to be something that was agreed upon before. And if you're a man of your word and you say, this is what we're going to do, then I think you got to honor it, right? I think you do, if you're the 76ers, I mean, you can do whatever, but I think you can. And to me, it's all about financially, like, how much money is he going to make if he's an assistant coach on the bench? And then also, if you're an assistant coach on the bench, you're not going to be that leader in the locker room. You're not going to be, right. I mean, they all fly on the plane together, but you're not going to be seated in the section with the guys. You know what I'm saying? It's more, for lack of a better word, a more intimate setting for him to be up in people's ears and letting them know what they need to do.
Yeah, I will say I'm not one of the bench coach role. I understand that's a question people have, but I do think, and I think you touched on it there, there's such a difference between you're with us, you're playing with us, and then that next step up with, oh, you're a coach. Like, I know that sounds wildly disrespectful, but there's a big difference of impact that your voice carries when you're someone that's either, playing with them or supposed to be playing with them. You're still in the battle with them, and you're not just calling the shots from the bird's eye view, so to speak. I think people underestimate the impact of a leader that is among you as opposed to somebody that's supposed to be over you. Is that a fair assessment?
It's a fair assessment, and you take Embiid's if you take Embiid's MVP out of the equation, he's the most successful player on the roster because he's also won an Olympic gold medal like Embiid has, but he's a six-time All-Star. Embiid has been 7, right? He's been to the NBA championship and won the daggone thing. You know what I mean?
Against you, yeah.
Against you, he was the one who beat you in the second round. So Paul George, you can't say all that for Paul George. You know what I mean? Now Paul George was on the Olympic team. He got injured and whatnot. Paul George is a 9-time All-Star, so he's been in more All-Stars, but he hasn't won an NBA title. He hasn't. So this guy he's the most decorated, in my opinion. And B got the MVP, but outside of that, he's the most decorated 76er right now. And he's a leader, dude. Like Kyle can, he gets guys in gear. Like he gets some stepping. So that's what they need.
I'm with you there. All right, when we come back, I want to highlight some things here with Tyrese Maxey and his relationship actually with Watford coming in here to Philadelphia, who does have a great chance there of being your number one power forward. We'll go back to that conversation and getting you ready for Summer League. We'll focus on it more a little later. But when it comes to one particular thing for VJ Edgecombe, we're going to highlight that after this. Quick break on Locked On 76ers. Told you it was quick. All right. First and foremost, the question came up yesterday with Keith Pompey about the relationship between Tyrese Maxey and Trendon Watford coming here from the Brooklyn Nets. Tyrese Maxey tweeted it out there saying that it's lit that Watford is coming here to Philadelphia. Well, the reason it's lit, Keith, you said yesterday you didn't know if they were best friends. Well, if they're not best friends, they're second best friends. So let's all go back to grade school where we ranked our friends. Tyrese Maxey mentioned one name and then also mentioned Trendon Watford is a guy that he's extremely close with, plays every day, texts with them every day. Now they're teammates. They've also never been teammates before. They were roommates at a summer camp in, I think Maxey said, the 8th grade, playing basketball together, but they actually never played on the same team. So this is going to be the first time. So there is a relationship there that is very close between the two. So just wanted to highlight that. I heard that, by the way, credit to John Clark, who interviewed Tyrese Maxey. Just wanted to make sure we got that in there. And then also this. Yesterday during his media availability, VJ Edgecombe said that he is concentrating when he was asked what he's working on right now. His outside shooting, great. Ball handling, fantastic. And playing the point guard position. This is what Summer League's for. But I did go back, Keith, under your recommendation, and watch Baylor versus Houston. And they had VJ Edgecombe running the point with all those NBA scouts in the building. And yeah, it did not look good. It did not look good. I will say they gave him a break, I want to say, after they statistically only credited him or charged him, rather, for 2 turnovers. He had 3, easy, in the first 3.5 minutes of the first half playing point. Unwise decisions, over-aggressive, forcing situations, first possession of the game. He brings the ball up the floor, drives the lane, nothing there, has a horrible kick-out pass that gets intercepted. Just bad stuff. In all, 5 turnovers was actually a season high for him. He matched that in that game against Houston. But in the second half, I will say, small improvement. Got a double team at the top of the key. Found the cutter, open man to the basket for an easy slam dunk. Good for him on that. Look, I always say I don't like to bet against people that have a great work ethic and a little bit of talent. He certainly has both those things, and even more so than a little bit of talent. But playing point guard, I will say this about Summer League. I'm very curious in the small amount of time, his progression if they have him play the point guard position? How much progression do you see from him, and how much do you think he'll play the point guard spot during Summer League?
I mean, when you look at the Summer League roster, like you would say, if Jared McCain was playing, you would say, okay, Jared would be the one and he would be the two, right? You would say that. But now when you look at it, you say it like, yo, this is the number 3 overall pick. He's the focal point. He's going to have to play it. I think that's what we're going to see. Like, because when you look at it, you know, you got Jared Hood Schifino and other players, but when you look at it, I see him having to be the point. And you know, it's going to be one of those things where they're looking at it like, and even the Hunter Silas, like he's a two-way player that they just signed. He's a shooting guard, so I think he's going to have to play that position out of need, and it's going to be a learning experience for him. You know, it is. It's going to be like baptism by fire, so to speak. Now again, there's going to be certain games where he's going to go up against people and he's going to dominate them with his athleticism. The only thing that I really don't like about him playing a point guard position, based off of that one game that I saw him play it at, is that it takes away his strengths. You know, he's a guy that gets out in space, he attacks the basket, you know, he does a lot of things. You know, when I saw him now, like leading, you know, showing leadership qualities, but getting everybody else involved, to me, they were playing 4-on-5. Like, he's not a point guard. He's a undersized, athletic 2 guard or 3, in my opinion. Like, you know what I mean, wing. So to me, it's kind of like, yeah, I get it. You want to get him to learn it, but at the same time, you're taking away from his strengths, in my opinion. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I hate to say it, but this is what the Summer League's for.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the processors really celebrated that Summer League championship in Orlando with Nerlens Noel. And I know they still got the confetti in their hair or bald heads for that. But this is about absolutely baptism by fire, Summer League baptism by match. I'll call it that, because this is where you got to work on all the things that could make you a much better NBA player. And if he's able to get the experience of playing the point guard position and being a little bit more of a facilitator by still being able to beat guys off the dribble, then I think you're going to increase the value immediately of a guy like VJ Edgecombe and get a lot closer to being a number 3 overall pick. And to go back to beating guys off the dribble, that's one of the things I like about point guard. I mean, people think point guard and they think, okay, distributor, and you should. That's number 1. You know, setting up everybody. Absolutely. Number 1. But when you're talking about overall getting better, this is also a guy that has to get better at his handle. So when you say beat guys off the dribble or anything like that, well, then, yeah, he's got to improve his handle to do that, because I don't want to just wipe away his other ability, speed, athleticism, and getting to the basket. But in order to utilize all those things and fit those things together, he's going to have to learn to beat guys off the dribble and then still be able to find guys on the cut to the basket. We've talked about it similarly with Tyrese Maxey. The next step he has is court vision, seeing the court better. And that's not something that he has right now as someone who's not a natural point guard. So look, VJ Edgecombe, and we've seen how long it's taken Tyrese Maxey to get somewhat used to the role. So now you're talking about a young guy in VJ Edgecombe, a 19-year-old essentially, to come in here and take over that spot, at least for Summer League. I'm looking forward to seeing how it works out in Summer League, but I am certainly not betting on him taking some kind of quantum leap forward where he's all of a sudden going to be running point for you to start out the season. I think that's the way Sixers fans have to kind of temper their expectations when it comes to what to expect from him in his rookie season.
Exactly. Now, the one thing that I will say with him playing point guard, you know, when people talk about him, they say like a weakness is, you know, his shooting and his dribbling, right? Like, you know, those type things. They could be, there's things that you can improve upon. He can improve upon. Well, if he's running point, basically he's going to get opportunities to work on the dribbling aspect. He also said that his jump shot is something that he's also been focusing on heavily this off season and improving. And another thing that we got to realize is that you can't get too high off of Summer League, nor can you get too low off of Summer League. I don't see him playing point guard after this. But we have to remember, Jared McCain was horrible last year in Summer League. I mean, he was talking about how he had to adjust to the NBA 3. Guys were like blocking his shot. He looked too slow. I mean, he looked like he was a disaster of a draft pick. But once the regular season came about, he was balling. I mean, he looked good. So, you know what I mean? So we have to take it for what it's worth. It's going to be a lot of development, putting him in situations that he's uncomfortable with, and we'll take it from there. And even if he like is the man, we also can't put too much into it because you got to realize he's going to go through some growing pains.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Absolutely. Let's see here. I want to get some comments in here. This is from Todd Green. Does it seem like Embiid and PG is the way of the team, or in the way of the team's growth? Yes. Yes. I mean, look, it's the double-edged sword of the only chance you have of winning a championship this year is that they're healthy. But I don't know anybody that's betting on them being healthy. So I think that's an easy way to look at it. There was one more about court vision I wanted to get in here. Phil W. Man, Maxey can't pass, bruh. I love him, bruh. Man, I'm telling you, as the biggest Maxey fan, laugh out loud. Look, I think it's an acknowledgement that that's something he absolutely needs to improve on. I think we agree on that there, Keith.
Yeah, he has to. I mean, you know, and again, it's one of those things where, and I do think that Maxey has grown, but it's one of those things when you don't have a traditional point guard and you take a combo guard and you have to give him the ball. It's one of those things you got to work through it. I mean, you got to deal with some of their weaknesses until he works through it. And you know, I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't think Maxey, he has improved in it, but he can't continue to improve because, you know, he's a guy who has made improvements, you know, since he began his career. But that's true. But again, when you have a team full of combo guards and you're taking the best one and saying, hey, bro, you got to be the point guard, these are certain things you got to deal with until he makes that progression.
I'm with you, Keith, 100%. I know we'll have more to break down tomorrow. Sixers are doing Summer League in Utah, Salt Lake City, and Vegas, correct?
Yep.
All right, so double dip in the Summer League. I look forward to it. Keith, we'll break it down even more tomorrow. We'll continue to follow what could happen here in the very near future with Quentin Grimes. Going to be a little bit of a process with all of that. Considering he's a restricted free agent, we'll continue to monitor that situation, whatever else pops up with your 76ers. Keith Pompey, make sure you guys are reading them on Inquirer.com. I'll be back with you guys. You got a triple dip, a quadruple dip of me today on the Locked On Network. Locked On 76ers, Locked On Eagles squad later today, and then Locked On Phillies postcasts, 2 of them today, Keith. Keeping me busy on the Locked On Sports Network.
You're the man. Hey, Mr. Locked On. Locked On Philly. That's what you should be.
I'll tell you right now, I'm locked into my seat for the rest of the day with all this stuff. I'll tell you that much. Keith Pompey, Marc Farzetta, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Make sure you guys like and subscribe and all that fun stuff on Locked On 76ers and all the Locked On platforms. Catch you guys tomorrow. See you. Bye.
Peace.